And welcome back to another Sportsnaut interview. And today we are joined by RJ Choppy, who is the co-host of the Sean and RJ show in Dallas. That is on 105.3 The Fan, which is the flagship station for the Dallas Cowboys. And that is the topic of our conversation today. The Cowboys, they had a dramatic win the other night against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That improves their record to 3-2 on the year. But let's start with your just some overall thoughts and your reaction to the win over the Steelers.
It was one of those kind of games that you have to play and you have to figure out a way to win. It's also one that's very kind of maddening because, they didn't play great. They had their moments. They made a lot of mistakes, but at the end of the day, they won. But you have to win those games. I mean, every team is going to go through those games at some point over the course of 17 weeks. And then the playoffs where this isn't working, that's not working. You got injuries going in. You get more injuries during the game. The weather, the delay. I mean, everybody at some point has to go through kind of those nightmare situations where not everything works. And they did. And look, this is a team and an organization. I mean, they write their own excuses half the time. So for them to come through in this game, I actually left a lot happier. If you were to tell me going in, it was going to be 20-17 and they were going to need a last-second touchdown to do it. I don't know. But, I felt much better about it.
Yeah, you mentioned it wasn't a pretty win, but it was a game that, you have to win. Dak Prescott, 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumbled loss. I want to ask you about Dak, and not just in this game, but overall your assessment of the way he's played so far this year. They signed him to that big money contract just before the season. How's he been doing in your eyes?
Yeah, it hasn't been the same kind of year as it was last year for Dak. And how much of that is new left tackle, right? So he's breaking in a new left tackle and a new center.
Yep.
Ceedee Lamb missed camp. Brandon Cooks is out, but even before then, he wasn't himself. Jake Ferguson got hurt week 1. It's not the best season for him to start, but I think that, Dak has shown over the course of his career, I mean, he's going to put up numbers. That's just the reality of it. He's going to put up numbers. Is he going to win the playoffs? I mean, that's the question that needs to be answered. So far the answer is no. At least not an extended run. I mean, he may win a game here or there, but the extended run, the answer is no.
So based on some of that stuff you just told us, Ceedee Lamb getting a late start at camp, some injuries, breaking into new center, left tackle, do you expect this offense to try to maybe get rolling here a little bit more as the season goes on?
I mean, look, that's the hope. And I think a lot of teams around the league have kind of gone to this thing where they're using the first 4 weeks or so as like an extended training camp because they don't do any preseason. Well, now we're into week 6. We're past that. We are past week. Do you want to say week 1 and week 2 and week 3? You get beyond that. You kind of just are what you are. And this team is, they've been really, really good the last 3 years. They've won 12 games each of the last 3 years. The offense has carried them. Well, I mean, the offense is not all that special right now. Are they going to make a move? There's talks. There's talks they might want to make a move. But what are they going to get? They're not going to give up what you want for Devontae Adams. So I expect it to get better, but how much better? There's a ceiling on it for sure.
I was looking at some numbers. I see as of right now, they're second in the league in average pass attempts per game at 38.8. Is that more of because of the fact that they have one of the worst run games in the NFL? And do you think that if they should have to continue to play this way on offense, is it sustainable for a full season?
Well, they do have one of the worst run games in the NFL, and that's a big part of it. But also, they've trailed. I mean, they were down big in New Orleans. They were down big to Baltimore. They were down in this game here. So they've trailed. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, they're gonna have to fight through it. Rico Dowdle did have a good game. He had a good night against Pittsburgh. I mean, that might be the best rush performance of the year when it's all said and done, 2 months, 3 months from now. You hope not, because it still wasn't even 90 yards, but that might be it. But yeah, the run game is just not there. And that's a major part of why this offense hasn't clicked, because I mean, you're going to pass 50 times a game. That means you're losing. And, generally teams that are throwing 50 times a game are throwing that much because they're down in the score, not because that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and that puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback who, at times can be susceptible to caving to some pressure. You mentioned, especially in the playoffs. You talked about, will they be active at the trade deadline? You mentioned Devontae Adams, but who else, what other positions do you think on this roster as it looks right now would need an upgrade?
Oh, I mean, if you were to tell me that I could get a good running back and get one cheap, I don't mean spend a first rounder on it. I'm not in all that. I don't want to pay him $10 million and I don't want to draft one in a high pick. But, if you told me that I could get a Chuba Hubbard from Carolina for a fourth, yeah, I'm in like all day. I don't know that they would do that. That might be too low. I don't know. I'm not a GM. I play one on the radio. But if you told me third or fourth, yeah, I could be down with that. I think running back's the spot they would go to. It depends on how long some of the guys at defensive line are out. If they were to make a move on the defensive line, they could definitely use a run-stopping defensive tackle. They just don't have one. Linebacking, they're probably okay. When Bland comes back, how is he when he comes back with the injury? I think it was an Achilles. Or ankle. So those are all questions you got to answer. And listen, if you were to tell me they got a wide receiver, I'm not upset about that either, because they don't have a number 2. Brandon Cooks is no longer another 2. Tolbert isn't ready to be a 2. So if you told me they got another number 2, I'm in on that one too.
We already discussed some of the issues they have running the football. But one of the other areas that this team has struggled so far this season is in the red zone. Right now, I looked it up. They're ranked 22nd in the NFL in red zone efficiency. They're converting touchdowns only 46% of the time. In your opinion, you watch this team every week. What are some things that they could do to help try to fix that problem?
Well, they don't have a great red zone threat, right? Ceedee is a great receiver. He is a top flight receiver. Dez was a much better red zone target than him, right? Terrell Owens was a much better red zone target. They're just bigger bodies. I mean, they were 6'4". They were big. I mean, Dez and T.O., I mean, if you stood next to them, you're like, man, we are not even the same species. Like they are just built so much differently, so much bigger. CD's a regular looking guy, right? He's just a regular looking guy. He's not going to be that jump ball threat that Dez Bryant, T.O. were. So I do think they lack a little bit of a true elite red zone great target. Doesn't mean CD's not great, but he's not what those guys are. So I think that plays into it as well. But also, look, when you don't have a running game, it's very difficult to score in the red zone. Running the football is a really advantageous part of the red zone because everything's so compact there, right? And you're not going to – if CD's a great route runner, I mean, route runners need space, and you don't have a lot of space down there in the red zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think the lack of the run game is definitely part of the problem for them in the red zone. I want to jump over to defense. You talked about some of the injuries along the defensive line, particularly at defensive end. I believe they've lost 4 at least this point in the season. I know they lost another one, Marshawn Nealand, in the game the other day. But the big one that I think Cowboys fans want to know about is Micah Parsons. What is the status for his return? Is he likely to come back to play this week?
It's going to be really, really iffy on this week. I wouldn't expect him this week. I would look towards after the bye because they got San Fran. Save him for after the bye. Look, they're going to try to get him to go, but I would not expect him this week. They're down. Look, they're down. That's the thing, and that's the thing about this offseason. You know, they lost some guys on the defensive side of the football to free agency. A lot of them went to Washington with Dan Quinn, and that the reality is that they were very thin there to begin with. And now you have something like this happen where you've got now, you have Micah and Tank and Nealand all go down. Now you're really cooked, and it's a tough spot to be in. Don't forget Sam Williams in the offseason, right? In training camp. You know, they lost him. That was right in front of us. That was a terrible injury because we were sitting there watching this, and it's just, God, because he's such a good, he's a good young player, right? He's good depth. Really come along. So that was a tough loss for them.
Yeah. Now, looking ahead to the matchup, it's a big game for both teams. They're looking to try to keep pace with some of those other teams that are at the top of their division. They play the Detroit Lions this week. Is this a matchup, looking at it on paper, schematics and all that kind of stuff, is this a matchup that concerns you for the Cowboys?
Oh, I'm terrified. Yeah, I'm terrified. So Detroit runs the football really, 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 really well. And they throw the ball well. They've got great weapons. Goff, I think Goff is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the league. He's very on time with his throws. He's accurate. He gets rid of the ball when he's supposed to. But this offensive line, they will manhandle you. I think David Montgomery is he's a unit, man. He is a beast. He keeps going. And then you bring in Gibbs, and I mean, he could catch the ball out of the backfield really well. He's very difficult to tackle in the open field. It's a tough matchup. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, they're going to find ways to match him up on a third corner. That's going to be a difficult, third. He's a great third down receiver. Laporta really hasn't done anything this year. And I mean, we're talking about that. Now, the Cowboys do have very good speed at linebacker. So I don't know how that plays into it, but if you can't get pressure on Jared Goff, he will pick you apart. And without Micah and without Tank, it's going to be more difficult to get pressure on Goff.
Yeah. If the Cowboys are to try to win this game, what would be, one key to the game for the Cowboys?
Oh, they got to force turnovers. I mean, they got to force Goff into an interception or two. Which, I mean, look, you could do that. It's not like he's never thrown before. He went on a streak last year where he wasn't throwing any for a while. Then he went back to more of a regular regression to the mean, if you will. But they're going to have to really take advantage of Detroit's secondary. We saw Seattle really take advantage of their secondary. Now Seattle has two tremendous wide receivers, at least two, and that are tough matchups for anybody. The Cowboys don't have that. They got one great one, but then they got the rest that just aren't great. They're going to have to find a way to stop the run too. Detroit's going to want to run the ball, and the Cowboys can't let them do it. I don't know that they're going to be able to stop that running game.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Cowboys on a 2-game win streak. They want to keep the winning ways going if they want to keep pace with the Commanders. RJ Choppy, everybody, you can follow him on X at RJ Choppy, and you can hear him on the Morning Drive Show, 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. That's the flagship station for the Cowboys. RJ, thank you so much for the time today.
My pleasure.